Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is November 11th, Friday, November 11th, Veterans Day. Veterans Day Friday, 3-day weekend for the federal government. Maybe don't come back, federal government. Oh, yeah, I'm an anti-government protester now. How do you like that? That didn't take long. Well, let's see. Where to start today? Another confusing day sorting through the aftermath of the election. There will be more reflection. Hopefully we can avoid the recrimination part of this a little bit, although there's going to be a sampling of that, no doubt. In our roundup of news, everybody's still feeling aggrieved by, well, we still haven't really sorted out the feeling of aggrievement as between ourselves, because Dems are in disarray. But there's plenty to distract us from that just by taking a look at what's going on the Republican side of the ledger today. More of pretty much everything you expected. So we'll chronicle all of that, of course. Lots to catch up on in that respect. The morning stories seem in the Eastern elite bubbles, you Eastern elite bastards, to be pretty much focusing on, the atrocities of the first 1 to 2 days of transition for the incoming Trump administration. I guess everything, I don't know how anybody expected it to go any different, and I'm not even 100% sure that Trump's supporters really expected it to go different. One of the things that I think we'll find, it was always true. The show always got a little bit too much, perhaps, into the nuance of just about anything, even things that didn't seem all that nuanced. But I guess, we'll dip toes in every stream, as usual, and try and figure out the best we can what's going on from the most reputable sources we can still find. But much discussion today about, for instance, the Trump transition team's dependence on the same old players, despite the last couple weeks of drain the swamp hashtagging from the Trump supporters and from the Trump campaign itself. The plain truth of the matter is that when you get to Washington, D.C., and you have to begin the task of taking over the policy apparatus of Washington, D.C., there aren't that many places you can turn to fill those ranks. And the lobbyists and swamp dwellers, as the Trump campaign and Trump supporters would have it, are at the ready. And we've known for a long time that the usual practice of anything, Washington, D.C., in no way accepted, is in a crisis situation or any situation, pick up what's handy. And that's why the lobbyists are here in Washington, so that they can be on hand when you're casting about for help in filling out an administration. Of course, up at the top of the administration, it seems, all rumors would indicate that all of the old players, and in many cases all of the old disgraced players of former Republican regimes, are to be either rehabilitated or at least whitewashed and replaced at the top of the Trump regime. Newt Gingrich, drummed out of Washington under a cloud of scandal, rehabilitated and ready to serve in the Trump administration. Rudy Giuliani, not drummed out of office per se, but certainly rejected post his mayoralty anyway, and has only done damage to his reputation in his support for Trump over the last couple of months. But he's set for rehabilitation and being airdropped up at the top of the Trump administration. Trent Lott resurfaced in the last day or so to say he stands ready to just help Mr. Trump learn his way around Washington. That's what lobbyists are for. Is it a both sides do it sort of situation? Sure, of course, absolutely. But, of course, one side in this campaigned on we're not going to do that anymore. But, of course, they are going to do it. And they always were. And to be honest, the late breaking of realization among Trump supporters, oh my God, we've been sold a bill of goods, is never coming. They either know and they're fine with it, or don't know yet, but will be fine with it when the time comes, when it's explained to them, as the lobbyists explained it in Politico this morning. Josh Warren sent me this piece, and it lays it out quite nicely. Insurgent Trump taps GOP insiders, lobbyists for transition. Veterans of two Bush administrations and Romney transition, which never happened, by the way, lay the groundwork for his presidency. And I guess the key paragraphs are up here at the top, as is the usual practice. Donald Trump campaigned as an outsider who vowed to drain the swamp in Washington, but the president-elect's transition team is packed with veterans of the GOP establishment, as well as with lobbyists for the fossil fuel, chemical, pharmaceutical, and tobacco industries. As Trump and his aides vet nominees for his cabinet and lay out a first 100-day agenda, they are leaning heavily on the sort of D.C. insiders that the billionaire railed against on the campaign trail, people who cut their teeth working for Presidents George W. Bush, and former nominee Mitt Romney, as well as on the influence peddlers Trump accuses of rigging the system against ordinary Americans. One Republican lobbyist told Politico that the president-elect has no choice but to turn to GOP veterans with government experience to launch a new administration. Who else are you going to go to? The lobbyist said. Unless you get some used car salesman from Dubuque, Iowa, you go to policy people. Oh my God, disdain for the hard-working, middle-class Americans of the heartland. But yes, I mean, in the end, any incoming administration, that's exactly where they're going to go. And that's exactly, on the other hand, is exactly what they're talking about, it being a swamp. That it's just, that's what's lying around on the ground here. That's what you'll pick up. Those are the people you'll use because they're here. Because it makes sense. Because if you review their resume, it has all over it, I've done the sort of thing that you need to do. It would make a sensible hire. But it will compromise you. But who cares? Usually, we roll our eyes at it, but recognize, that's really just, that is the way it is. These are the people who know how to do these things. And as much as we might want to experiment with the idea of maybe a used car salesman from Dubuque, Iowa would be better at this than this guy, look what he did. We have his track record. We can check him out. I'd rather roll the dice with this car salesman. And surely a lot of Trump voters really did feel that way, though they must have known at some level that wasn't going to happen. And if they didn't know and they're disappointed, tomorrow they'll read on their Facebook feed that Breitbart News says it's okay. It's more than okay. It's actually good because reasons. And they'll just say things and then people will say, okay, that's it. Is it because people are gullible? I don't know. I guess that's one word for it. They're trapped in news bubbles. Yeah, that's another word for it. Are we unfairly accusing them of being trapped in news bubbles while absolving ourselves of being trapped in news bubbles? No, we can't quite do that. But maybe we should. Maybe that's the way you fight this. I suppose if fighting fire with fire is a good idea, then then we have to get ready for doing that. Right? Let's all just lie to ourselves. And I think we're just not really ready for that. And there's no real reason why dealing with the truth, or at least as close to the truth as we think we can get, is a bad idea. It's not something to give up on. I'm not done with it yet, and I hope you're not either. Okay, so let's see. Well, I don't know if there's anything else worth combing out of this article necessarily. I saw the lead of it, and I thought that was worth mentioning. It's a big story in today's news roundups, wherever you might turn for them. Lots of people talking about it, but maybe it might be worth taking a look at just to try and figure out, comb out any names of actual actors here that we might see land at the top of the pyramid in the next administration. Okay, so let's see. Are we ready to roll here? We give our tip of the hat once again to everybody who starts us off with morning tweets. But too many people are enjoying some of the other morning frivolity on Twitter today, and are sending along too many other comments, so that now my morning tweet from Bill has scrolled by. Let me have to dig that one up. Although I now have a competing morning tweet. You guys will have to fight after school. Bill in Portland, Maine reminds everybody Daily Coast Radio is live now. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. I guess I got to go back to a pseudonym now, go underground in this insane administration. David Waldman eulogizes his faithful food taster and announces an opening for a new one. Apply now. Yes, poor Megyn Kelly, who was poisoned allegedly during the election cycle. That's another of the big news stories. Megyn Kelly's book, which we mentioned was coming out a few days ago, we noted, because it made a big splash. She was alleging in, I guess, advanced copy from her book that she had, in fact, been sexually propositioned by Roger Ailes, who, by the way, don't worry about him, he just won the election. Although it was reported that he and Trump were somehow on the outs. I wonder whether he is worming his way back in. And it may just be that, I don't know, if you're Rupert Murdoch and you can't find, let's say you can't find somebody suitable in your mind to continue running Fox News. I mean, given what's happening on the ground elsewhere among Trump supporters and the things that they think are now legal in their mind, and all of the predictions of kids basically running around wilding on minorities and girls and claiming it's now legal are in fact coming true. It's a huge collection of stories. I have to try and decide, like, what is my personal policy going to be on propagating those stories, on retweeting stories collected that way on Twitter or talking about them. There are just so many of them. It threatens to overwhelm, just like Gunfail. But I can only handle one deluge at a time. But Sean King has been collecting those stories from all sorts of sources, from newspapers as well as personal anecdotes. Facebook, we talked about the various problems with Facebook, and we have more to talk about. More articles, more writing daily on the Facebook effect. But lots of Facebook stories from people who have experienced it personally, or their kids experienced, or came back and told them what happened in school that day. So it does appear to be happening everywhere. Definitely true. We want to check in on that. The other morning tweet that we have, by the way, Josh Warren, another of our big contributors who sent me this Politico story, also has a Kagro in the Morning is live tweet. Kagro sends a huge Veterans Day thanks to Newt Gingrich, who served valiantly in the 2013, 14, and 15 Wars on Christmas. Yeah, I guess that'll be back. Or did they win the War on Christmas? I don't know. All right. Well, let's see. By way of organizing thoughts for the day, let me just say that's not going to happen. We're not going to get this straightened out, and it's going to be stream of consciousness again. But that's the best I can do for you. Let's start by, let me open up Pocket and get to the things that I had saved when I was in a more organized frame of mind, and start there. Of course, we don't have Greg Dworkin with us for the morning grounding of concentrating on an actual news and headlines roundup. That always helps. Although I guess I could always head on over to Daily Kos and look for the abbreviated pundit roundup. Whether he did it or not this morning, I don't know. But that's always a good place to start, too. Let me at least have that on hand. What I wanted to talk about, though, Georgia with the morning's roundup. What I wanted to at least bring to your attention first off was the Facebook issue. Greg mentioned this yesterday in some detail. We discussed the fact that a huge segment of the population on all sides get an awful lot of their news via Facebook, their Facebook feeds, people sharing stories, etc. But we mentioned the odd phenomenon of the purely economically motivated Macedonian teenage social media hackers, I guess you could call them, who found that there was just plain old money to be made circulating high traffic, sensationalist and often completely bogus stories designed to get Trump supporters in the United States to click on them and share them on Facebook with their friends so that other people would click on them and that they would then make advertising traffic dollars for themselves. They had no interest in supporting Trump. They didn't care who Trump was. They didn't care what happened. They only cared that whatever it is, Americans love clicking on this. And Americans, as it turns out, are the most valuable Facebook ad clickers in the world. So that's just what they did. So let's see. We have a couple of entries in the Facebook sweepstakes here. And the last one in is usually the one at the top of my pile in Pocket. But I'm trying to sort of scroll down and see. I feel like there was one or two more that we put in Pocket earlier and then buried it. But whether or not I can quickly find it, of course I forget to tag these things. They come in so fast and furious. Well, let's start with this one. In New York Magazine, we have this entry about, as plainly titled as it could possibly be, Donald Trump won because of Facebook, by Max Reed, R-E-A-D, which seems like that would be a sort of computer, like Max Headroom, a computer-generated columnist. Max Reed. It's perfect. Who we need somebody who will generate the most readership. Well, how about Max Reed, our computer? He's a real person. I just thought I'd throw that out there. But anyway, Donald Trump won because of Facebook, he writes. A close and, to pundits, journalists, and Democrats, unexpected victory, like Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump's, is always overdetermined. And no one particular thing pushed Trump over the edge on Tuesday night. His chosen party's lately increasing openness to explicit white nationalism, the still recent global-scale failure of the liberal economic consensus, and the apparently deep-seated misogyny and racism of the American electorate, Hillary Clinton's multiple shortcomings as a candidate, or even the last-minute intervention of FBI Director James Comey, might each have been, on its own, sufficient to hand the election to a man who is, by any reckoning, a dangerous and unpredictable bigot. Still, it can be clarifying to identify the conditions that allowed access to the highest levels of the political system to a man, I've read that sentence wrong. It can be clarifying to identify the conditions that allowed access to the highest levels of the political system, a man so far outside what was, until recently, the political mainstream, that not a single former presidential candidate from his own party would endorse him. In this case, the condition was Facebook. To some extent, I'm using Facebook here as a stand-in for the half-dozen large and influential message boards and social media platforms where Americans now congregate to discuss politics, but Facebook's size, reach, wealth, and power make it effectively the only one that matters. Let's see. Where was I on this? I'm distracted by the fluttering of Twitter once again. And boy, does it matter. At the risk of being hyperbolic, I think there are few events over the last decade more significant than the social network's wholesale acquisition of the traditional functions of the news media, not to mention the political party apparatus. Trump's ascendancy is far from the first material consequence of Facebook's conquering invasion of our social, cultural, and political lives, but it's still a bracing reminder of the extent to which the social network is able to upend existing structure and transform society, and often not for the better. The most obvious way in which Facebook enabled a Trump victory has been its inability or refusal to address the problem of hoax or fake news. Fake news is not a problem unique to Facebook, but Facebook's enormous audience and the mechanisms of distribution on which the site relies, i.e., the emotionally charged activity of sharing and the show me more like this feedback loop of the news feed algorithm, makes it the only site to support a genuinely lucrative market in which shady publishers arbitrage traffic by enticing people off of Facebook and onto ad-festooned websites using stories that are alternatively made up, incorrect, exaggerated beyond all relationship to truth, or all three. To really hammer home the cyber dystopia aspect of this, a significant numbers of the sites are run by Macedonian teenagers looking to make some scratch. That's the second of the two linked phrases in the last paragraph. The first one is to interesting, to a New York Times article I have not read, although the URL indicates that the title would be Inside Facebook's Totally Insane, Unintentionally Gigantic Hyperpartisan Political Media Machine. Take note. Maybe we'll peek in on that one. All throughout the election, these fake stories, sometimes papered over with flimsy, quote, parody site disclosures somewhere in small type, circulated throughout Facebook. The Pope endorses Trump. Hillary Clinton bought $137 million in illegal arms. The Clintons bought a $200 million house in the Maldives. Many got hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of shares, likes, and comments. Enough people clicked through to the posts to generate significant profits for their creators. I need to do this. I just need to. Anyway, the valiant, ignore that. I didn't say that. The valiant efforts of Snopes and other debunking organizations were insufficient. Facebook's labyrinthine sharing and privacy settings mean that fact checks get lost in the shuffle. Often, no one would even need to click on and read the story for the headline itself to become widely distributed as a talking point, repeated elsewhere online or sometimes in real life. And parenthetically, he adds, here's an in-the-wild sighting of a man telling a woman that Clinton and her longtime aide, Huma Abedin, are lovers based on, quote, material that appeared to have been printed off the internet, unquote. I don't think we actually need to see that, but you get the idea. Anyway, continuing on, profit motive on the part of the Macedonians or Americans was not the only reason to share fake news. Of course, there was an obvious ideological motivation to lie or mislead potential voters. But the fake news industry's commitment to engagement above any particular political program has given it a terrifyingly nihilistic sheen that old-fashioned propagandists never displayed. Say what you will about the old practice of rat effing. Say what you will about rat effing, dude, at least it's an ethos. And at the heart of the problem, anyway, is not the motivation of the hoaxers, but the structure of social media itself. Tens of millions of people, invigorated by insurgent outsider candidates and anger at perceived political enemies, were served up or shared emotionally charged news stories about the candidates because Facebook's sorting algorithm understood from experience that they were seeking such stories. Many of those stories were lies or parodies, but their appearance and placement in a newsfeed were no different from those of any publisher with a commitment to, not lying. As those people and their followers clicked on, shared, or otherwise engaged with those stories, which they did because Trump drives engagement extremely bigly, and yes, he still claims that that's big league, and I guess we'll have to learn that over the next couple of years, they were served up even more of them. The engagement-driving feedback loop reached the heights of Facebook itself which shared fake news to its front page on more than one occasion after firing the small team of editorial employees tasked with passing news judgment. Not nude judgment, although that would have been good too. Flush with Trump's uniquely passionate supporter base, Facebook's vast personalized sewer system has become clogged with toxic fatbergs. Yum. What a great image to start the day with. And it is truly vast. Something like 170 million people in North America use Facebook every day. A number that's not only several orders of magnitude larger than even the most optimistic circulation reckonings of major news outlets, but also about 1.5 times as many people as voted on Tuesday. 44% of all adults in the United States say they get their news from Facebook. And access to an audience of that size would seem to demand some kind of civic responsibility, an obligation to ensure that a group of people more sizable than the American electorate is not being misled. But whether through a failure of resources, of ideology, or of imagination, Facebook has seemed both uninterested in and incapable of even acknowledging that it has become the most efficient distributor of misinformation in human history. This is an enormous problem. I need to just take a short break from reading through this piece. There's much more that we need to add to this. Even if I don't find the other pieces, I can tell you what I've been seeing, discussed, and try and comb. I need to just comb back through my own tweets and retweets of the last 24 to 48 hours and remind myself of all the things that usually when I tweet things, retweet things, whether I pocket anything or not, I'm usually thinking this would be great to discuss on the air, but then 20 hours pass and I forget what they were. But, yes, I mean, just from I'm just off the cuff here. I'm thinking, I don't know how in the world Facebook could ever design a fair program to handle this issue, to determine somehow the truth value. Who knows? Can you even really... there are some things that would be obviously easily checkable and rejected as untrue. But on the other hand, what do you do if you're a business like they are and you've got enormous user bases from what we'll conveniently just still call both sides? And, you know, half of your base is going to say, you say this is untrue, but I don't say this is untrue, and you're really screwing yourself. We're all gonna boycott. I mean, I guess you could just say go for it. And I guess if I were going to choose, well, in the past, if I were going to choose one of the other teams, I would say, fine, let the right wing start their own right-wing alternative to Facebook, because it will be the 99th right-wing alternative to XYZ important and socially popular thing that they have launched and failed with. But they did just Facebook their way into the presidency, so maybe this time it would work. I don't know. Anyway, let's continue with the article. Oh, we'll pause for a second. Parleo has this comment. Facebook reflexively flinched under right-wing pressure and handed them a long-term advantage, just like with Acorn. What kind of pressure? I mean, the pressure to try and sort things out. Do you think it was right-wing pressure that led them to get rid of their editorial team, their live editorial team? Or did they try and do that for cost savings anyway? But they when they realized it was a problem, they refused to move back to the old model under right-wing pressure. I'm not sure specifically what we're talking about on that front, but I guess I've got a couple of guesses. There were complaints of liberal bias. There always were, of course, complaints of liberal bias, which is why we have the long list of failed efforts at starting a right-wing version of XYZ. I mean, Reagan Book, which is about the dumbest name for anything that I've ever heard, was a real attempt at I say real attempt. I mean, it really happened. Or somebody said they were really trying to do it. An attempt at making a right-wing version of Facebook because they're angry about left-wing bias. But that was years ago and didn't go anywhere. Anyway, we'll continue on with this already coherent collection of thoughts that Max Reed was, I hope, paid handsomely to put together, as opposed to my completely free, disjointed meanderings. Anyway, worst of all, it's not clear that there's any remedy, and this is where I was trying to get to anyway, so why don't we let Max do it? The truth is that Facebook seems less malevolent here than insecure about its power, unsure of its purpose, and unclear about what its responsibilities really are. Frankly, too, I am not sure I feel comfortable allowing Facebook's heavy hand, which infamously censored the iconic Napalm Girl photograph, remember that? Determining what is legitimate and what is illegitimate news. Yeah, that is problematic. I feel even less comfortable ceding that determination to an algorithmic sorting mechanism as opaque as Facebook's. That would be, of course, worse, I think. Media consultant Jim Rutenberg's suggestion in the New York Times, and you know it's good if it's in the New York Times. I don't know. All right, there you go. That the cure for fake journalism is an overwhelming dose of good journalism is inspiring, but it seems to me that the problem we face is not a lack of journalism, good or bad, but an overwhelming abundance of it. Fake news attacks discourse in structurally similar ways to the DDoS, remember those denial of service attacks, that recently crippled internet infrastructure for a day. Hoaxes overwhelm political conversation, facts, ideas, and stories, with junk, aware that the rules of the system, in this case freedom of speech, prevent it from distinguishing between legitimate and illegitimate, and therefore from stopping the attack. An overwhelming dose of good journalism, rather than addressing or rebutting lies and hoaxes, would simply add to the cacophony. Presented identically on Facebook alongside fake journalism, it would merely appear as another opinion in a swarm of them. Of course, lies and exaggerations have always been central to real political campaigns. Facebook has simply made them easier to spread and discovered that it suffers no particular market punishment for doing so. I guess there's the issue, right? You would, I think, still have market punishment for a mainstream news outlet that was just found to be predominantly lies, although people would then point to, well, what about Fox News? Yeah, but that just, and it ends up becoming a bubble. Maybe there's just, there isn't actual punishment. It's just, you end up segregating instead. I don't know. Okay. Well, we'll continue on. Right, so where were we? No particular market punishment for doing so. Humans seem to have a strong bias towards news that confirms their beliefs. Well, we've heard that before. And environments where those beliefs are unlikely to be challenged. Really, I'm not sure that the most significant effect of Facebook's dominance is the way it abets the already extant spread of mis- or disinformation. And rather, and I'm cribbing here from sociologists who we've heard from before but never learned to pronounce her name correctly because it's Turkish and that's very difficult for me apparently, Zeynep Tufekci, whose name, hopefully she'll put a pronunciation guide in her Twitter account profile one day, but we hear from her quite a lot. And I follow her, even without being able to pronounce her name aloud. We also hear this thought from media pundit Clay Shirky in the cribbing here. Max Reed says, I think it's the way it's crowbarred open the window of acceptable political discourse, giving rise to communities and ideological alignments that would have been unable to survive in an era where information and political organization were tightly controlled by corporate publishers and establishment political parties. Put another way, it's not just that Facebook makes politics worse, it's that it changes politics entirely. For most of the 20th century, the flow of information was controlled by a relatively small number of media companies. And remember, we thought that was a bad thing. Large newspapers and later the major broadcast networks. These companies were large and generally corporate, establishment-friendly, and politically centrist. They limited, mostly, the acceptable range of political opinion because that nice middle was where advertising and subscription business models were most profitable. This limitation on the supply of information and opinion both enabled and was enabled by two establishment political parties which had effective control over political mobilization, having cobbled together unstable coalitions of voters bound by fairly tight ideological windows. Facebook assaults both components of this power dynamic, providing the platform and audience that only news media outlets once commanded, and the organizing power that only parties once held. As then Senator Obama understood well in 2008, the Internet provides political candidates a previously unimaginable opportunity to identify, communicate with, and organize supporters, an opportunity that significantly exists outside the traditional party apparatus. Trump, like Obama before him, was able to connect with voters outside the more stifling confines of political party organizing. Trump, a longtime Democrat with liberal social positions, that used to be the case, rose to the nomination because he could express a political position, essentially white welfare state ethno-nationalism, that the party would have once choked off for threatening its delicate coalition of business interests and white workers. Facebook connected those supporters to each other and to the candidate, gave them platforms far beyond what even the largest establishment media organizations might have imagined, and allowed them to effectively self-organize outside the party structure. Who needs a GOTV database when you have millions of voters who worked into a frenzy by 9 months of sharing impassioned lies on Facebook, encouraging each other to participate? Very true. Even better, Facebook allowed Trump to directly combat the hugely negative media coverage directed at him simply by giving his campaign and its supporters another host of channels to distribute counter-programming. This, precisely, is why more good journalism would have been unlikely to change anybody's mind. The Post and the Times no longer have a monopoly on information about the candidate. Endless reports of corruption, venality, misogyny, and incompetence merely settle in a Facebook feed next to 100 other articles from pro-Trump sources, if they settle into a Trump supporters feed at all, disputing or ignoring the deeply reported claims, or, as is often the case, just making up new and different stories. None of this is in particular new. The structures of political power have been challenged frequently in the past century, mostly by the arrival of new media, radio, television, cable, that changed the scale of the audience and consequently the political and social culture of the country. Every time a new medium expands the possible audience of mass media and opens up new spaces for new voices to be heard, it upsets the delicate balances of power that rested upon the previous media structure. You know, if you thought radio changed politics, just wait until television. And if you thought television changed politics, just wait till Facebook really hits its stride. Or, well, I guess it just did. And a good point. And I guess another case in point then for that argument, just something I sort of saw randomly this morning. Let me go to my own Twitter feed here today and see if I can scrape it up because I retweeted it early on. Where was this? Here we are. And it was Grudging Tweeter, who now just goes as Grudge. Grudging1 on Twitter, who's a longtime follower. I don't know. Do you listen to the show, too, as well? I'm not even certain. I can't differentiate sometimes in the mornings. But he shared this one. And, again, because I had to take a quick look at the profile, I lost track of where it fell in the feed. But here we are. Just sort of with the comment of, oh, my God, what have we unlocked? This tweet from Nick Ramsey, who is, well, let me see, make sure that our video doesn't start just yet. Nick Ramsey is a MSNBC producer at The Last Word and 11th Hour, if you are familiar with those two programs. And I guess we caught, so it was, the tweet was from Nick Ramsey saying that one of their reporters was having a rather interesting day. Cal Perry, who tweets under the Twitter handle of Cal MSNBC, not Com or Coms NBC, but Cal Perry at MSNBC was doing this street interview with somebody out protesting Trump. You know, one of the many people, and we really haven't talked enough about the fact that all of this is going on. But somebody who was out in one of the many protests taking place around the country against Trump, really basically wherever there are Trump properties, people are gathering and outside and signs chanting the whole 9 yards. So here is Cal interviewing a person on the street holding a sign that appears to say, if I can make it out here, ban all bigotry, deport hate, build bridges. You get what that's all about. And a woman in a Trump t-shirt happens by and is enormously disturbed by the fact that they are interviewing this man and not her, and decides that'll change right now. I'm simply going to butt in here and make this interview about me. So the interview is in progress, and then here's the clip. I'll just play it, and we'll let me pump up the volume a little bit here and see if we can get it to come through nicely.
Anything to aid his campaign. I mean, I don't support him.
No, I know. Make sure you get that on camera, okay? No, but you don't get that interview.
That's not what bigotry means.
You just get that on camera.
That's not what bigotry means. That's not what bigotry means.
All right, so just to clear up what's going on here. The "that's not what bigotry means" voice is the young man being interviewed while holding his sign. Cal is pretty much stunned at this point. Confused as I would be about exactly how to handle this young woman. And she's a young white woman carrying her coffee in the pre-dawn hours of the morning. I don't know whether this is happening in New York, probably outside of Trump Tower in New York, or where exactly they are. But she has now butted in, simply walking by and ducked her head in and said, oh yeah, you're going to cover this guy protesting, but you're not going to cover the real story, the truth. And so much of this sounds exactly like what we figure they must be getting from their Facebook feeds. Let's back it up just a little bit and continue listening.
That's not what bigotry means. That's not what bigotry means.
Why don't you get it on camera? Why don't you get it on camera instead of editing?
Hey, I'll tell you what.
Instead of editing, it's 1 million.
So one more pause here where that other voice that comes in that says, I'll tell you what, that's Cal. But he really doesn't have much to say in this. He's just kind of like, maybe the thing to do is to let her rant.
It's $1 million a month anonymous Feed the Children donation.
Let me back that up so I can make sure that you hear this claim, by the way, okay?
Camera instead of editing.
Hey, I'll tell you what.
Instead of editing, it's $1 million a month anonymous Feed the Children donations. Why don't you get that on camera?
Why don't you wait?
Why don't you get on camera that he recruited immigrants to help him build towers so he could put them up? Oh, you don't get that on camera, right? This is what you get on camera.
You should see the face on this woman. She is so angry. I mean, I recognize the face. It's a face I make fairly frequently. Just like the pointing and the sneering and the teeth. She's baring her teeth at Cal. And listen to, I mean, did you hear? I don't even know how well this comes across in the audio, but the claim is she's so angry. Why are you filming this guy? You won't get on camera the real story. Why don't you get on camera the real story of Donald Trump's $1 million per month anonymous donations to feed the children? What? Are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know where it comes from. I really have no idea. And I mean, I guess us poor idiots who are stuck in the reality-based community, the most you can say is, there's no evidence of that. To which they say, well, of course there's no evidence. It's an anonymous donation. And I mean, if you're thinking fast enough on your feet, I guess you can say, yeah, that's what happened. Donald Trump makes $1 million per month anonymous donations to feed the children because Donald Trump hates publicity. There's nothing he hates more than getting attention and credit for his own philanthropy. I mean, if there's anything we learned about Donald Trump from David Farenthold's reporting, it's that he loves nothing more than to get publicity for philanthropy, whether it's his or not, whether it's real or not. He loves nothing more than claiming credit for giving donations that other people paid for, and he loves nothing more than claiming credit for donations that he says he's going to make and he doesn't make. That's the upshot of David Farenthold's reporting for the last couple of months. Donald Trump loves attention for his philanthropy. The odds of his giving $1 million a month to anything, including himself, is near zero. But $1 million a month to charity anonymously, no way in hell. None. But she's sure she's right. And of course, on the other hand, as I love to frequently point this stuff out, because it costs me nothing to point it out because I don't have a base, right? So who cares? I lose. I promise you, I am in the studio right now, and you would see it if I would dare to give you video. I am baring my teeth and sneering and pointing and saying there's no way in hell he'd give $1 million anonymously to anything ever for any reason. But because there's that twinge of guilt in the back of my mind about being part of the reality-based community, I don't know for sure that he's not doing that. But neither does she, but she won't acknowledge it, and I will, and now I'm at a structural disadvantage. So, what the hell? To hell with it. I'm right, but maybe I'm not right. Bill asks, he's got a question here too. My question is, how does she have this information about his anonymous donations if they're anonymous? And the answer is, she's completely mental, and she read it on Facebook. And you know what? Even Donald Trump never claimed, as far as I know, to have been giving any money of any amount, anonymously or otherwise, to feed the children or anybody else, really. I mean, he certainly claimed to give money to other people. That's true. That part. Now I'm a liar. I said something wrong. I misspoke. So that's it. I'm dismissed. No more engaging in a conversation for me. But yeah, he certainly never claimed to be giving anonymous $1 million a month donations to feed the children. But somebody put that out there because why the hell not? Right? Somebody got caught in a jam, probably arguing with somebody over his philanthropy, and the facts marshaled by David Farenthold were overwhelming. And so they said, well, you don't know about his $1 million a month to feed the children. Well, where did you hear that? Point me to that evidence. Well, it was anonymous, so there isn't any. Well, there would be evidence of that, of course, if he released his taxes, because certainly giving $1 million a month, even if you give it anonymously, $1 million a month, you're still claiming as a charitable donation on your taxes. But of course, I guess they could say, well, no, he isn't. He's so generous that he is giving the money anonymously and refusing. He's maintaining his anonymity by refusing to claim deductions for it on his income taxes, which also, by the way, I can't prove to you because you can't see his income taxes. But trust me, I read it on Facebook. So I don't know. She's so angry about it, it doesn't even matter. And Cal here is like, well, let me give you... he's stuck in the good guy, reality-based community loop. Well, her accusation is that I don't dare give her camera time unedited. So how about if I assuage that anger? Is that right? Assuage? Can you? I assuage guilt. Do you assuage anger? How about I placate your anger by giving you unedited camera time? The response to which, of course, is, you're not going to give me unedited camera time. You're going to edit this. Well, how about if I tell you I'm not going to edit it? Well, I don't believe your promises. Well, okay, then whatever. But do you want to say something to the camera, unedited or not? No, I don't. Okay, then don't. Well, that's because you're going to edit it. All right, then I'm not going to edit it. Well, you will edit it. Well, how about if I say I won't? Well, you probably will anyway. Well, okay, then this is not worth having as a conversation. But you're pretty angry, so let's proceed, I guess. I don't know what else he's going to do, right? He certainly can't punch her in the face and tell her to shut up, tempting though it may be. Let's back it up a little bit here, just so you don't miss any of the fun stuff she has to say.
put them up. Oh, you don't get that on camera, right? This is what you get on camera. This is what you get on camera, right? And you edit it accordingly. You wait until they bait him, and then you edit it, right? You don't include the fact that we have an awesome president now who took a step down from unappreciative motherfuckers. Okay? Unappreciative.
What's your name? Sorry.
Now we pause here to see. This is her claim, okay? We don't have any coverage of the fact that we have an awesome president. Well, gee whiz, can you fact check that? Did anybody say he was an awesome president? An awesome president, and I have it free. The frame is frozen on just this unbelievable glower from her. You really got to see this thing. I'll share it with you, of course. If you haven't seen it, it's on Twitter. I shared it earlier this morning, about 7:30 a.m. Eastern time, if you want to scroll back down. Otherwise, we'll have it in our roundup summary post that Scott Anderson will help with, and you can check it out in the afternoon. But so in addition to having claimed that he gives $1 million a month anonymously to feed the children, she's also angry that you're covering this because you're not covering that we have an awesome president who has taken a step down from his lofty position to serve this country for you unappreciative mother effers. That's you're unappreciative. He hasn't done a goddamn thing, of course, and he won't do a goddamn thing, and he won't be taking any step down either. As we find out this morning, his children will be minding the store for him while he's president, managing his business affairs in a blind trust, which of course means nothing because there is no, is there such thing as a blind trust where your business interests are being managed by your children? That's not what a blind trust is. But they say blind trust because that's the sort of smart sounding word that we're supposed to accept as reasonable and an acceptable solution for somebody's business interests while they serve in office. Will it be blind? No. Will it even be a trust? No. But will it be a blind trust? I don't know. The thing is, smart people say they want to hear me say blind trust. So blind trust. And that's all. So I don't think we've even gotten to the whopper yet, which is, I think, the ultimate in the projection category. We've seen a number of times throughout the campaign that one of his most consistent tactics is projection, right? Anything that if I'm in the middle of doing something bad, and we've sort of put a number of things under the umbrella of projection. I guess the classic projection situation would be somebody who has maybe a guilty conscience about something that they are doing and they know is wrong, and they project onto others the same fault, and he takes it a step further and makes it more of a Nazi propaganda move. Not necessarily that it's Nazi propaganda, but the Nazi play of accuse the enemy, or at least what has apocryphally become known as Nazi propaganda techniques. Accuse the other side of something you're doing and already doing and know you're doing, whether you feel bad about it or not, so that, a number of things can happen. One, if you know it's a bad thing and people will perceive it that way, your accusation is out there first, and then when they say, God, that's ridiculous, that's projection, I'm not the one doing it, he's doing it. Oh, yeah, the old he started it routine. Everybody recognizes that from the kids. So you soften things up that way. But he had a unique brand of projection in which all of his faults that he knew to be true, or at least we assume he knew them to be true. We all knew them to be true. We assume he lived on the same planet. He simply said, oh, those bad things are true. It's just that they're not really bad things that I did. Those are actually bad things that Hillary Clinton did. And if there are good things in the world that she did, those aren't really things that she did. They're actually good things that I did. Watch what happens when this woman continues on her rant and then goes back to riff on the bogus claim of $1 million a month anonymous donations to feed the children, feeding hungry, starving children around the world. Watch what happens. Keep in mind the work of the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative versus the actual reality of the Trump Foundation and the way he spent his money. As we would have it, the Clinton Global Initiative and the Clinton Foundation did remarkable charity work around the world, and the Trump Foundation money was largely pilfered by Donald Trump to buy gifts for himself, or where he didn't do that, where he really thought he was making charitable contributions, he was instead pilfering other people's charitable contribution dollars and pretending that they came from him so that he could get publicity for his supposed philanthropy, which jives perfectly with the $1 million a month in anonymous donations, of course. But watch what she does with this. Listen to this.
Okay? Unappreciative.
What's your name? So I got it.
None of you damn. Oh, you'll edit it. You'll edit it and portray it as something totally different than what it really is.
I almost forgot about this part. This happens first. He asks, okay, so we've gotten your opinion on camera. What's your name? And she says, or starts to say, none of your damn business, because, of course, she wouldn't dare identify herself. But worse, she's got a conspiratorial explanation for why it's not a bad thing to spew invective and then hide behind your anonymity. It's okay to do because if you identify yourself, they'll just come to get you, and they'll edit it anyway and misrepresent it as something completely wrong, and they'll do something completely nuts and portray her by name on the air as a maniac racist, even though she's a maniac racist, and the video is what it is. No, they photoshopped an angry face onto me. It's an anger filter from Instagram. I don't know. But anyway, so that's it. So none of your damn business, and I'm not going to tell you who I am because you'll just edit it, okay? Suppose I won't edit it. Well, you will. All right, we're back in that loop, but let's get to the projection issue in just a second, I think.
Something totally different than what it really is, right? So you're not getting my name. You're getting a you. You don't give it. You don't give it as it really is. You don't give it or portray it as it really is. A good man with a good, awesome heart that traveled the world feeding the kids. You mother.
Thank you.
That's the end of that one. Can you believe that one? Did you hear what happened at the end of that one? You don't portray it as it really is. A good man with a good, awesome heart. Another fantastic vocabulary. Although she didn't know the word accordingly, which was, I thought, to her credit. But I'm flabbergasted by the end of that one. And flabbergasted is a good word too. That in her view, the real problem here is that it wasn't Hillary Clinton who was traveling the world doing charitable good works. No, she was stealing the money from her charity. Don't you see it? She was the one misappropriating millions of dollars from her charity for her own benefit, while he, Donald Trump, was traveling the world feeding hungry children. I can't believe you stupid MFer media don't see it. A man who was giving of himself, traveling the world, giving away his fortune to feed hungry children. And another evil witch who was stealing the money she was raising, supposedly for charity. You don't portray that. No. Do you see what has gone on here? Donald Trump is now the international philanthropist who traveled the world to give away money. He traveled the world, all right. I'll show you the pictures of him traveling the world, hanging out with oil barons and Middle Eastern sheiks, putting up multi-million-dollar gated golfing communities in Dubai and in Moscow, holding the Miss Universe contest, and all over the world, yes, to make money and put it in his own pockets, sure. But, I mean, at least legitimately so, when it was a business. I was sure the business was about putting money in his pockets. I'm okay with that. Everybody has to be okay with that. Unless we have that revolution we were all told was going to happen if things got bad enough and we voted him into office. I'm still waiting on the announcement for the revolution. But, maybe that's my responsibility. Sure, why not? Anyway, more to the point, she's completely flipped that narrative now. Donald Trump is the one who was traveling the world giving away money to feed hungry children, and Hillary Clinton is the one who was stealing the money the whole time. And you ought to be ashamed of yourself for not seeing it. Don't you understand, you idiots? I thought that was a rather amazing interview, and an interesting starting point for any number of other discussions, not just the misinformation ones, pardon me, but also a discussion about, one, my follow-up comment to this, in addition to just sharing it like, oh my God, was, we just spent the last 24, 48 hours sending out our most reasonable voices and the people that we hope will take the reins of the Democratic Party and help us rise from the ashes and engage with middle America as we're supposed to do, as we're being urged to do by reasonable people everywhere, and get that vote back. We just spent the last 24 to 48 hours swearing on a stack of Bibles, basically, that these people, they were right to be angry. They had a right to it, and they were right to be angry, and they had legitimate anger, and we really needed to tune in to them and figure out what it was that they were all about. Well, she doesn't speak for everybody, surely, but there's the anger. We just told everybody it was right, and then we gave her a camera, and now we have to go look back in the camera and say, well, not her. She's not right. Surely, though, someone else somewhere is right. Maybe the car dealer, the used car dealer from Dubuque. But we hate that guy because he's dumb and doesn't know anything about policy. Yeah, we're all responsible for that one. I know. But, well, hell, there's an awful lot that can be said about that one. And I just thought it was a remarkable clip, and I'm glad you got a chance to hear it, and I hope you did. Is this the one? Yeah, I think so. I think it's just another clip of it. Anyway, I thought that was a rather remarkable development, to say the very least. So between that and the Facebook story, there's a lot, of course, to discuss. Let me see what else we have here. Here's an interesting bit. I don't even know where this fits in the spectrum, but I thought this was, I don't know what, interesting to add in there. And it's a Friday, so maybe we'll add it. Howard Stern, his name came up in the middle of the election. The Hill has this story. Judy Kurtz says, Howard Stern, I told Trump to drop out. Interesting, right? And so I was intrigued. From what perspective did he tell him to drop out? Why? Because, please, Donald, drop out. You're going to F up the country? Actually, as it turns out, I found it hard to believe that Howard Stern would actually say that, though I didn't find it impossible to believe that he might think that. And it's funny, of all people, to not believe would speak his mind. But I thought it more likely that he did speak his mind and that his mind was just somewhere else. And it was. But just so you know where it was, I will tell you. Plus, of course, there's lots of cursing in here, so I get to say radio-wise, effing this and S that. So it's always fun to have to clean up other people's profanity, but it's mostly cleaned up because it's in the Hill. Howard Stern says he personally appealed to Donald Trump to end his White House bid, telling the then GOP presidential nominee the run was going to F up his life. It's an interesting perspective. And you know what, though? My first reaction was, so Howard doesn't really even give a crap about the fact that it's going to F up the country. He's talking to him about, they're palling around as celebrities. This happens when they happened to be dining at the same restaurant earlier this year after Trump had secured the Republican nomination, it says, according to the piece. As a matter of fact, it says, he sat down at my table. And we were talking, Stern recalled, of his conversation with the now president-elect, who was out celebrating wife Melania's April birthday, which is very nice. I think it was before she found out that he was having an affair with a Playboy model while they were first married. But yeah, happy birthday. Anyway, look, he's 70 years old now. Maybe all of that is behind him. Who knows? Anyway, I thought it was interesting that Howard Stern was telling him this in terms of, well, let me tell you what he tells him, and then we'll talk a little bit about it. People love you, he says. They leave you the F alone. They know you from television. What the F are you doing with your life? Stern says he told Trump. So first you're like, why doesn't he tell him, but also the country, for God's sake? I still don't know why he wants it, Stern said. Listen, when you've got that great a life and you're 70 years old, what do you think you got left? Now, for the next 4 years of his life, and you don't know how long you're going to live. He's got to sit there and deal with people's effing anger, Stern claimed. Can he give the people what he promised them? Can he really change the economy? Can he really change America? You know, this is like a barge. And if things go wrong, not even because of his own fault, and the economy starts to falter, then you're everybody's effing scumbag. Everybody's like, F him. And he's right. I mean, they will be, I assume. Though the woman in the video probably won't be, but the rest of us will be. And first I was like, oh my, but still, why don't you say something about the country? But Howard Stern is not a dumb guy. Plays a dumb guy on the radio, just your regular average sort of dude. But he knows he's smart too, and he is, and he's smart in his own way. And I'm not saying he's a genius or that he's any kind of model for behavior, although I admit I listened to him for many, many years, and I think if you take him with the appropriate grain of salt, there's much to be learned about him. Even, I don't know, people are lecturing me I got to go pay more attention to used car salesmen from Dubuque. So I thought maybe, it's not so bad to listen to a loudmouth from New York. Anyway, it struck me that you could make the excuse anyway. You could backfill in this excuse and say maybe Howard Stern knows that there was very little chance of talking him out of the race, obviously. I think there's just no doing that. But he did probably appeal to him maybe was the only one to appeal to him on the level that might actually have worked. The idea of, you're going to fuck up the country. Oops, I just did that one. Oops, sorry, everybody. Well, we'll edit that one out of there. Sorry about that. That's the first time I ever let that one go, I think, on the air. Apologies to everybody there in the We Act Radio listening area. Maybe we're in commercial. Cross your fingers on that one. The idea that you're going to screw up the country, that's not going to faze him. He don't care. It won't be effed up for him. But the possibility that you'll F up your own life and screw up the good things that you think you have going for you, that could possibly work for him. That might just do the trick. I don't know. It didn't, but it was an interesting attempt. So we'll just finish up this bit and see if there's any more particular insight in this one, right? Saying that at 70 years, Trump likely has 10 years left before he, quote, starts to drool, unquote, on himself. Stern continued, why would you want to do that for the last 10 good summers of your life? I don't get it. And I said to him, don't do this to yourself. That might well have worked. Some of Trump's controversial remarks about women from his many appearances on Stern's show drew renewed attention during the 2016 campaign. I remember thinking to myself, I don't want him running for effing president. Stern, who supported Democratic presidential nominee Hillary Clinton, said this week, we have all these tapes. I said, this is going to destroy the friendship because they're going to use this S against you. You're going to... they didn't censor this one. Interesting. They did a good job dashing out all of the appropriate or inappropriate letters and everything else. But they're going to effing drag you through, I said. Why do you want to do this? Stern surmised why Trump, who for years flirted with the political bid, may have finally decided, that's an interesting and new one for me, decided to enter the 2016 race last year. I have a different theory. I think NBC was effing with him on the Apprentice deal. They were going to lower his pay. Ooh, that would have been an interesting and angry way of entering the race. Okay. Well, at any rate, let's see. Let me get back to this one. They were going to lower his pay. I wonder where he gets that, and by how much. Well, this was all because they were going to lower his pay? Asked Stern Show news anchor Robin Quivers. I'm telling you the truth. Listen to me. They were going to F with him on the contract. Stern, 62 himself, by the way, replied. He said, you know what I'll do? I'll run for president. Even if I don't win, I'll announce, it'll up my game, and I'll get a better deal, which is a smart move. I truly think the biggest shock in all of this is to Donald Trump, Stern told his audience, because I think it was more of a publicity kind of thing. I'll get my name out there. I'll see what happens. We'll have some fun. I don't know that he could have imagined that this could have been the outcome. That would be par for the course, I think. Anyway, I don't know. I thought it was very interesting, and mostly because it gave me something to think about what Howard Stern was doing. That at first hand, or at first glance, it was like self-important celebrity bubble stuff. Why would you do this to yourself for the last 10 good summers? And also, highly insulting to anybody who's like maybe had a good summer past the age of 80. But okay, fine. But he may have been onto something there. That might have been the only thing that dissuaded him from doing this. But of course, he thinks he's in astonishingly excellent health and will live to be 157. I don't know. But I have my doubts about that. But it was a good try. Thanks for giving it a good shot, Howard. Okay, so on to other news. Here's that other article that I was thinking of earlier. There was an LA Times entry in the Facebook sweepstakes, which, I don't know. We have time to get through the story, but I don't know if their story adds that much more to the picture than the more colorful commentary we got on it from Max Reed. But we do have a little extra time on our hands today because our usual Friday visit with Josie Duffy Rice is going to be pushed. We're gonna get this to the point where it's a more regular thing. But I think, in addition to being just damn busy, she like many of us is feeling a little out of sorts post-election and just not upbeat material for the show, which would be okay, but I would like to have guests on when they're feeling up to being on too, so they feel like they have something positive to contribute to the discussion. I felt like I was forced to come on the air, even though truthfully I'm not, and if I had abandoned the show forever, really, then I don't know that I have no contract anywhere that says I have to do this, but I'd have to give all your donations back, and I guess I could, easy enough to do that. We simply cancel the account at PayPal and Patreon, and it stops drawing on it. But I don't want to do that. I'm enjoying the show. I was, finding it difficult to come on the air, obviously, but I feel a little bit better about each day that passes, not because things are getting better, but because I feel more ready to talk about what's happening, and I'm hopeful that in some way, even though it's not necessarily down and dirty brass tacks organizing that we need to be doing out there, and if anything, it's a 2-hour distraction from it. But I don't know. I feel like everybody needs a little bit of a break from it, and I think we add a little something to the thought process here, and and hopefully people who are organizing on the ground find it informative and useful anyway, a good input into the hard work that they're doing. Speaking of the hard work that they're doing and the Facebook thing, I did catch in passing that I'm not exactly sure what he's got in mind, but I've seen similar projects in the past. Oliver Willis, who is with Media Matters and has lots of his own very interesting and thoughtful side projects, he's got the Facebook bug himself and just says, yeah, pretty much I've come to the conclusion that Facebook is probably the more powerful platform for influencing and organizing than Twitter is. Twitter seems to me a lot more fun because, of course, it's more instantaneously interactive than Facebook. Facebook still seems pretty static to me, even though things do, in fact, change very quickly. The fact is that I'd still, maybe if I got used to Facebook, it still seems static to me, not live the same way that Twitter really is. But he's organizing something, and the American Resistance, I guess, is what he's calling it, a Facebook page called the American Resistance, and he's had sort of news feed, Facebook-based news feed kind of projects in the past before, but I guess he's just sort of now thinking, really have to renew my interest in and work on this. And he's got, 1,600 plus, I guess, likes / follows / subscriptions, whatever they're using on Facebook these days. But, basically saying, all right, well, I'm going to organize on the same platform that the Trump folks organized on and see if I can't counter some of that. So kudos to him. I appreciate that he's doing it. We probably all should be attempting to do it, but we can, of course, contribute to it in the media in which we are most comfortable. And I'm sure the stories, if they're worth their salt, will make their way to his feed too. Anyway, so back over to, I guess, the more news-oriented take on the Facebook story. This one from the LA Times. After Trump's win, even some in Silicon Valley wonder, has Facebook grown too influential? And a video accompanies this, but let's take a look at the written report here. David Pearson is our reporter. I hope no relation to Katrina Pearson, but spelled the same way. Hillary Clinton was the choice of nearly every American newspaper editorial board. It didn't matter. Yeah, we might as well take note of that. When it comes to influencing public opinion, the 2016 presidential election demonstrated with sobering effect the weakening role of traditional media and the ascendant power of social networks like Facebook. 44% of Americans get their news from Facebook, according to the Pew Research Center, filling a void left by the declining ranks of newspapers. By comparison, only 2 in 10 U.S. adults get news from print newspapers daily. The consequences of Facebook's growing sway became clear during an election cycle that saw the rise of partisan news, conspiracies, fake articles, and a winning candidate who fully embraced social media as a way to circumvent the media establishment and its proclivity for checking facts. The problem with rumors and fake news grew so acute that President Obama felt the need to address it at the Clinton rally Monday in Michigan. And they quote him as saying, and people, if they just repeat attacks enough and outright lies over and over again, as long as it's on Facebook and people can see it, as long as it's on social media, people start believing it, and it creates this dust cloud of nonsense, he said. The question now is whether Facebook and other social media platforms have the responsibility to stop or at least identify readers, phony news. That's eliciting some reflection in Silicon Valley, which has always advocated a laissez-faire approach to information. In a widely shared video Wednesday, Dave McClure, founder of the business accelerator 500 Startups, went on an expletive-laden tirade about technology and President-elect Donald Trump's victory at a tech summit in Lisbon, Portugal. Technology has a role in that we provide communication platforms for the rest of the expletive country, and we are allowing expletive to happen like the cable news networks. It's a propaganda medium. People aren't aware of the expletive they're being told. In a phone interview later, McClure challenged other entrepreneurs to live up to the industry cliche of making the world a better place. We have to support the well-being of society, McClure said. With great power comes great responsibility. Did that originate in? Did that originate in Spider-Man? It feels like an old cliche that they just used in Spider-Man, but I don't really remember anybody ever saying that except after Spider-Man. Did they take? I mean, it's clearly an old thought. Did they just give a new framing to it? I really don't know. I'm afraid to find out. Should have been afraid to ask because it's a dumb question. Anyway. Where were we? You have to support the well-being of society. Great power, great responsibility. These are platforms with hundreds of millions of people. Even backers of Reddit, a sprawling network of user-generated forums that bills itself as the front page of the internet, and that is a problem place, isn't it, are having second thoughts about an ecosystem that prizes virality and offers little reward for accuracy. Don't know how you retune that, but he's right. Or that's right. Back when Reddit was first started, I thought their cheeky tagline, freedom from the press, was all to the good, said Paul Graham, co-founder of tech incubator Y Combinator and the first investor in Reddit. Now, I worry where we're headed. Technological change is mostly inevitable, Graham continued. I don't think we could have avoided what's happened. Often when technology causes a problem, it also hands you a solution. I'm hoping that will be the case here, but I'm damned if I know what it is. But here's $1 billion anyway. Facebook has long argued that its news feed is a reflection of its users' wider world. Over the summer, the company changed its news feed algorithm to deliver more posts from friends and family rather than articles. The company said Wednesday it would continue to tweak its news feed algorithm, but declined to address bogus journalism on its platform. While Facebook played a part in this election, it was just one of many ways people received their information and was one of the many ways people connected with their leaders, engaged in the political process, and shared their views, a Facebook spokeswoman said. The internet has always been home to fringe ideas and hoaxes, of course, but rarely have they been bolstered by an all-consuming topic like this year's election and powerful social media platforms to fan the flames. Facebook reported that 115.3 million users generated 716.3 million posts, likes, and comments about the election. Meanwhile, Twitter said it registered more than 75 million election-related tweets on Election Day, and 2.5 times more than it did on Election Day in 2012. The staggering election-related activity on Facebook comes at a time when the social network has been littered with thousands of fake stories with headlines like FBI agent suspected in Hillary email leaks found dead in apparent murder-suicide. Maybe in an apartment, I don't know. From fake news organizations with reputable-sounding names such as the Denver Guardian. Last week, BuzzFeed reported on teens in Macedonia who churn out hundreds of politically charged make-believe articles for American audiences. You know all about that. The article noted that the fake story from Macedonia headlined Hillary Clinton in 2013, I would like to see people like Donald Trump run for office. They're honest and can't be bought. Garnered 480,000 shares, reactions, and comments on Facebook. That's nearly 3 times the Facebook interactions the New York Times got for its scoop about Donald Trump declaring $916 million in losses in 1995. Fake news even made its way to the candidates. Trump himself has used his widely followed Twitter account to retweet and share false crime data that massively overstates the percentage of whites killed by blacks in the U.S. Time out, because it's not mentioned here, but important sub-theme to that story. It was one of several times that he got his fake news from explicitly white supremacist websites. That also needs to be pointed out and discussed and isn't done. That's not done here. It doesn't mean the guy's a bad reporter. It just means I can't fit everything in 2 hours. He can't fit everything in one of these articles. Surely he knows that, and surely it has been covered by the LA Times in the past. But there has to be a way of putting this all together in one place. I guess that's us. Journalism experts say Facebook needs to take more responsibility for its content now that it commands the influence newspapers and news networks once did, just without the same scrutiny and regulations. The $360 billion company doesn't need a broadcast license, nor is it largely responsible for what its users publish, thanks to Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which places responsibility on individual users. That is also a very, very interesting note. I don't know that it was likely to come out differently, but just another note about disruption and new paradigms and Uber and Lyft and aren't they better, etc. It's just another one of those situations where, gee whiz, how does it become a $360 billion company? Part of the reason is that all of the advantages of the news networks, the giant news networks that have been built, that is, its ability to pull in billions of dollars in advertising dollars because of the eyeballs it attracts, comes without the anchor of needing infrastructure. I mean, Facebook needs infrastructure and lots of it, no doubt. Expensive stuff too, but comparatively speaking, compared to the amount of and cost of the infrastructure of a television network or a print newspaper office, that's just not. It's just not comparable. So you just slash the overhead and get all the upside. And also, P.S., the law also was written, and again, I don't really know that this is the intent of it. I don't know how else you write it, given the way the world and the internet really works. But just P.S., you also don't have to spend any time or any money checking the content that gives people reason to want to click through and hand over advertising dollars as well. You can just fill it with anything. And in fact, other people will fill it for you unpaid, and you don't have to spend any money checking it. So, gee whiz, no wonder it became a $360 billion company. It was a situation tailor-made to just hand money to the guy. Great job, well done. Nothing wrong or illegal about it, but in hindsight, we might ask, was it that innovative? Did it disrupt idea? Are you a social engineering genius, or just, well, gee whiz, you got handed a huge economic break? It's not your fault, just saying. That effectively shields Facebook from libel and defamation, giving it room to take a hands-off approach on content. The company may have other reasons for not wanting to get closely involved in curating content. Facebook got rid of its human news curators this year after they were accused by conservative groups of favoring established media sources for its trending news feature. That job now rests on an algorithm. And I just saw Rebecca Romans comment similarly. Remember that there has been an increase in fake news stories on Facebook since they replaced the human editors with bots. Yes, absolutely true. And I think we all recognize that. I don't know how you would write a bot that would note fakeness, but I guess you could, I don't know, there could be some kind of filter for, well, what's the source that we're pulling this from? If it comes from a place that we know identifies itself as parody, then that's an easy fix. But when it's not, I don't know. If Facebook wants more eyeballs, the LA Times continues, and it's in the business of getting as many as possible, it's incentivized to give its users the news they want rather than the news that's real. Perhaps one of the reasons why daily newspaper circulation has declined all but 1 year in the last decade. That's merely widening the echo chamber inside communities that dismiss traditional media as biased and elitist. If their goal is simply to retain user engagement by reaffirming everything users already believe without challenging them, then there are real consequences. They need to own up to that, says Gabriel Kahn, co-director of the Media Economics and Entrepreneurship program at USC's Annenberg School for Communications and Journalism. Which, by the way, all schools for communication and journalism appear to be Annenberg schools. Keep hearing that name over and over again. Just another, I don't know. I mean, that's what Facebook and disruption fans would point to and say, see, that's what we're trying to disrupt. Anyway, moving on, the continued undermining of institutions such as the news media in the eyes of the public remains troubling for Kahn. There's also this quote that I actually skipped over accidentally. Kahn said the proliferation of fake news reminded him of what the late Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan often liked to say: everyone is entitled to his own opinion, but not to his own facts. I've dedicated my professional life to reporting accurately about difficult and complicated events, and I continue to believe that there's a public value and an economic value to doing the job of a reporter as classically defined, said Kahn, a former reporter and editor for the Wall Street Journal. So, an interesting note and another interesting and slightly different take there. I guess I'll also note the other part of the discussion on the topic of the day that came up in my own Twitter feed, and I think I probably sent this one on. Yes, here we are. Anil Dash, who tweets this article and a link to The Verge and comments on Twitter: everyone who buys advertising should listen to Zuckerberg. Now, this is interesting because Zuckerberg, of course, feels like he's under attack in all this. Facebook did it, and Facebook is under attack. And Facebook did do it, or at least contributed to it, right? That's an easy sell. So, of course, he's out there saying, no, wait a minute. You can't blame this on me. And that's not entirely false, and the whole thing isn't being blamed on you either. But Anil Dash says everyone who buys advertising should listen to Zuckerberg saying that Facebook is ineffective at influencing people. That's how he wants to get off the hook. Oh, come on. We don't really influence people like that. We don't really have that much pull. You're attributing this to us so you can attack us or find somebody to blame for the outcome of the election. And that's probably, at least in part, true. But it's probably not a good defense or valid defense to say, well, we don't really have influence. I mean, it's not Facebook that's doing it, it's true, but I wouldn't duck everything. But any part of it that you don't duck and that people want to do something about is a threat to some portion of that $360 billion, and that's his bottom line. But on the other hand, I mean, I have some faith that Mark Zuckerberg will recognize I have enough money at the moment. I might be able to be okay with getting dinged personally, but then, he's also got to worry about, well, how much is the ding? Because does this mean I get to grow this thing anymore or not? Zuckerberg, the headline of The Verge says, Zuckerberg, the idea that fake news on Facebook influenced the election is, quote, crazy. Voters make decisions based on their lived experience, which of course includes Facebook, but somehow that's crazy. A day after criticism over his company's role in spreading fake news about political candidates, Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg rejected the idea that the news feed had tilted the election in favor of Donald Trump. Personally, I think the idea of that fake news on Facebook, which is a very small amount of the content, influenced the election in any way, I think it's a pretty crazy idea. Voters make decisions based on their lived experience. Zuckerberg was speaking at the Technonomy conference where interviewer David Kirkpatrick pressed him on Facebook's growing power as a distributor of news and information. He said people who reacted with shock to Trump's victory had underestimated his support. I do think there's a certain profound lack of empathy in asserting that the only reason someone could have voted the way they did is they saw some fake news, Zuckerberg said. If you believe that, then I don't think you have internalized the message the Trump supporters are trying to send in this election. Of course, what if the message they're trying to send is fake news? But okay, I get you. There's a point. Zuckerberg suggested that one reason fake news could not have influenced the election is that false and inaccurate articles were posted about Trump and Hillary Clinton. What would you think? Why would you think that there would be fake news on one side and not on the other? He said. But a BuzzFeed investigation earlier this year found that the top right-wing Facebook news outlets published false or misleading stories 38% of the time, compared to 20% for top left-wing outlets. And of course, I would say, I think there's a major difference that almost everybody will admit to, that I would guess that the most dedicated Trump supporters, as a matter of principle, refused input from traditional media at any point in the campaign, unless somehow somebody found something that was pro-Trump. Whereas I think it's probably largely the case that people who were, if not Clinton supporters, then at least Trump haters, did in fact refer to mainstream traditional media more often. And while they did very often reject stories that were negative about their own candidate, they did reject them in a slightly different way, I think, for the most part. I think the majority of opposition to Trump, if not Clinton supporters, there were certainly Clinton supporters who just would see a story that was negative about Clinton and say, that's just not true. Or then shade of gray, that's not accurate, or that's improperly reported and I have this dispute with it. But more often, I think the bulk I found of people on that other side from Trump, when they saw negative news about Hillary Clinton, engaged that news. They occasionally denied it to be true or disputed it, and sometimes they disputed it with things that weren't true themselves, but they rarely said, I just don't want this in my life, and shut it off, or said, that was a media invention, or said, that's a lie outright, and it was concocted for the purpose of defeating her. There definitely were people who did believe that and did say that. My impression is I thought I saw them do that. But I think I saw, again, I guess here all I can offer you is my own impression. I also think I saw many, many more people say, now I reject the conclusion that I think they want me to draw from this article. I dispute their view of this stuff, but I acknowledge that it was reported. I don't need to rely on fake stories, and I think that happened more often on the right, but maybe I'm wrong. Kirkpatrick also pressed Zuckerberg on whether Facebook created a so-called filter bubble, an echo chamber where Hillary supporters could only see views from fellow Hillary supporters and Trump supporters could only see views from fellow Trump supporters. Isn't that Eli Pariser's term for it? That was the name of his book, if I remember correctly. All the research we have suggests that this isn't really a problem, he said. Zuckerberg cited a study of 10.1 million politically affiliated Facebook users that the company published in Science last year. It found that liberals and conservatives see about 1% less news from the opposing side than they would if Facebook didn't tweak the news feed. Maybe. One hard truth that did emerge from the study is that people are simply less likely to click on articles that do not reinforce their previously held beliefs. I think we would be surprised by how many things that don't conform to our worldview we just tune out, Zuckerberg said. There I think he's got something. I don't know what to do about that. And what could you do? Still, the study had several flaws, as noted by researcher. Hey, she's back in our feed again. Damn it, and I still haven't learned how to pronounce Zeynep's name. But she's back here again, as noted by her and others. Among them, the study was conducted not on a random sample of users, but instead a small, skewed subset of Facebook users who chose to self-identify their political affiliation on Facebook and regularly log on to Facebook, about 4% of the population, give or take, available for the study. Another, because Facebook's data is inherently private, it is difficult, if not impossible, for researchers to do additional independent work on the problem. Still, the Wall Street Journal recently found significant differences in the newsfeed content distributed to liberals and conservatives. Zuckerberg said he's deeply concerned about how Facebook could affect democracy and said there were unspecified things the company could do better in the future to improve the way it distributes news. I really care about this. I want what we do to have a good impact on the world. I want people to have a diversity of information. I don't have difficulty buying that as his position. I have enormous difficulty offering a solution. I have not got any idea. I can't believe that he's going to have one either, and I don't blame him for it. Look, in the beginning, hey, it's just a way for people to talk. I mean, it maybe had darker actual beginnings, the real origins of Facebook, if the social network is an accurate portrayal. Although, wouldn't it be amazing if its origins... if it somehow stayed closer to its origins, given what we read yesterday, or what Greg read from us from the tweet storm yesterday about the weird overlap between Trump World and men's rights Gamergate pickup artistry sites, and I really do believe that they're onto something there. I mean, that just seems very obvious to me. That they really are onto something in portraying the direct line between those strange, weird, and otherwise you might think disparate movements, but they in fact are the same people over and over again. It's a little worrying, and now thinking about the original origins of Facebook and how it was really kind of like back in its days at Harvard, that it was kind of a little closer to what the, the Harvard men's soccer team was actually doing. Boy, Harvard sucks. I'm getting tired of these Harvard jokers. Man, maybe it's not Facebook that needs to be banned. Maybe it's Harvard, but that would be terrible. But that's where we get all our experts so that we don't have to rely on used car salesmen from Dubuque, Iowa. We may really be onto something here. Anyway, I now I'm stunned by that momentary realization, forgetting where I wanted to go next. But I think it was over to, well, gosh, a zillion things. I'll narrow it to two. One was yet another assembled tweet storm, which I think eventually I noted on Twitter, but got turned into an article. It was published in article form in Roll Call. First, it was a tweet storm, but let me get to that article form of it instead. That'll be a lot easier. And the other would be I did want to talk a little bit about the Megyn Kelly book and the revelations to come out of it. There's a lot of newsworthy stuff in there too, and heading into the weekend, you should be aware of it. Okay, so let's start with the tweet storm that got turned into an article. It's here in Roll Call, and it's where's our writer's name here? Patrick Thornton is the writer, and I let's see, down at the bottom, it'll probably tell us a little bit about who he is. He's a senior director of user experience at CQ Roll Call, which I guess explains how a tweet storm so quickly turned into an article on CQ Roll Call. But fair enough. This is what he had to share. I am a coastal elite from the Midwest. The real bubble is rural America. Aha! So, something. Okay. I'm from the rural Midwest, he says. I now live in Washington, D.C. All of this talk about coastal elites needing to understand more of America has it backward. Oh, good. Phew. Somebody's going to tell me that I have it backwards. Hey, I love my bubble. All right. Well, there's something in every bubble. And we spent the last couple of days saying the other bubble was the one we needed to pay attention to, and then they went crazy on camera. One person. Unfair. My home county in Ohio is 97% white. I, like a lot of other very unrepresentative counties, went heavily for Donald Trump. I'm sorry, Patrick. It wasn't that I went heavily. His county, like other very unrepresentative counties, went heavily for Donald Trump. And speaking of unrepresentative counties in middle America, we will, I think, soon enough be back to the goddamn it, why do we do our first primaries and caucuses there? Yes. I mentioned that so that Armando will come back to the show one day. My high school had about 950 students. 2 were Asian. 1 was Hispanic. 0 were Muslim. All the teachers were white. And again, not enough time, but do make sure you check in on, and I will share some articles for weekend reading about what's happening in our high schools, the specific instances of people intimidating others because they think that's what we're supposed to do now because Trump. And yes, it's as unbelievable as you might have imagined. It's not just, oh, hey, there's a Muslim person in hijab, let's harass them. It's everything. Every hatred and bigotry that could possibly be expressed, even those that were never explicitly expressed by the Trump team, and there were plenty. And you got to be held accountable for explicitly expressing the anti-Muslim bigotry and the anti-immigrant bigotry. But then there was the sort of sub rosa anti-Semitic bigotry that the campaign never explicitly expressed, but it tolerated. So now there's people all over the country reporting that there are kids in their classrooms saying, all the Jews got to go. What? I mean, I know that there were Nazis involved in your campaign, but I didn't think that was going to be the first thing out of the box. I thought you'd stick to the obvious, which is not to say that that would have been a good thing. It would have been a terrible thing, and we should have opposed it. But it's, in terms of what did I expect first, I expected the other one first, so that we would have an opportunity to live the first they came for the, and I did nothing, so that we would be able to do something this time. Okay, my high school, Patrick writes, had about 950 students, 2 Asian, 1 Hispanic, 0 Muslim, all teachers white. My high school had more convicted sexual predator teachers than minority teachers. That's a rural American story, And you're right. That's your heartland values for you. The truth is, this stuff, yes, happens everywhere. It will happen in rural America too. But there you go. So you end up, for lack of diversity, doesn't eliminate the problems. A lot of people actually think that it's diversity that brings the problems. No diversity in the teachers, all white, but lots of sexual predators. Whoops. Well, not lots of, but some, and that's all that matters, right? It doesn't eliminate the problem by eliminating diversity. In many of these areas, the only Muslims you see are in movies, like American Sniper, and elsewhere, of course, but that's a hell of a grab for you. I knew 0 Muslims before going to college in another state. You never see gay couples or even interracial ones. Much of rural and exurban America is a time capsule to America's past. And on Tuesday, I guess that's why they keep saying they want to go back to the past, and we keep saying that past never existed, and it didn't. There were teachers molesting kids there too. They just didn't talk about it. But I guess that's what they're imagining. On Tuesday, November 8th, 2016, they dug it up. The first gay person I knew personally was my college roommate. A great man who made me a better person. But that's an experience I would never have had if I didn't go to college and instead decided to live the rest of my life in my hometown. That was when I realized that not supporting gay marriage meant to actively deny rights to someone I knew personally. Very important. And let me also comment on the previous statement. Again, it's an experience he would never have if he didn't go to college and instead decided to live the rest of my life in my hometown. You can go to college and live the rest of your life in your hometown, depending on where your hometown is and whether it has a college. But you can go nearby or community college or go to college for 4 years and come back. But people don't for a number of reasons. But when we keep talking about college educated versus non-college educated and rural America versus urban America, one of the effects of getting that education, in addition to leaving rural America, even if you go to, there are rural colleges, but even if you go away, you leave, you go somewhere else where people are drawn for the academics or some other reason into areas where there's just bound to be more diversity, that's what it takes. It's not necessarily the education, it's the exposure, although they are very often part and parcel of one another, the same thing. Part of the education of going to college, I mean, you can go to college online and get educated, but I don't know if it's going to be the same experience. But you get the idea. That's part of it too. It's not necessarily the fancy pants college degree. It's just the going and living near and with people who are different from you, who turn out to be kind of normal. Okay. When you grow up in, I don't want to skip over something here. But again, education and living in your hometown. You can get exposed, educated, come back to your hometown and help too. That's another thing you can do. I wouldn't be, as what he had said, it was about, he learned that not supporting gay marriage meant actively denying rights to someone I knew personally. I wouldn't be denying marriage rights to other people. I would be denying marriage rights to Dave. Not me. But yeah. I mean, why not? I would have to look Dave in the eye and say, Dave, you deserve fewer rights than me. You deserve a lesser human experience. It could be another issue, if you want it to be me this time. Okay. When you grow up in rural America, denying rights to people is an abstract concept. Denying marriage rights to gay people isn't that much different than denying boarding rights to Klingons. If you are living in rural America, it doesn't make a difference. Yeah, I deny gay people to, equal rights to gays. So what? There aren't any that I know of around here. I have some extended family in rural New Jersey. And there is a rural New Jersey. Some of them have never been to D.C. before visiting me. They had never made the short drive to see the Constitution in person. They had not seen the Apollo moonlander, nor George Washington's Revolutionary War uniform. And they certainly have not seen the new Museum of African American History and Culture. They've never seen the extent of American greatness or its messiness. To pin this election on the coastal elite is a cop-out. It's intellectually dishonest, and it's beneath us. We as a culture have to stop infantilizing, as normal people say, and deifying rural and white working class Americans. Their experience is not more of a real American experience than anyone else's. But when we say that it is, we give people a pass from seeing and understanding more of their country. More Americans need to see more of the United States. They need to shake hands with a Muslim, or talk soccer with a middle-aged lesbian, or attend a lecture by a female business executive. We must start asking all Americans to be their better selves. We must all understand that America is a melting pot and that none of us has a more authentic American experience. If we pin this election on coastal elites, we are excusing white working class and rural Americans for voting for a man accused of violating the Fair Housing Act by refusing to rent apartments to black people. If we pin this election on coastal elites, we are excusing white working class and rural Americans for voting for a man who called Mexicans rapists, drug dealers, and criminals. If we pin this election on coastal elites, we are excusing white working class and rural Americans for voting for a man who called for a complete ban on Muslim immigration. I have friends and acquaintances who are Trump supporters. They genuinely do not understand today's shock, particularly from minorities. These Trump supporters do not understand that many minorities believe the people who voted for Trump endorse his racism and bigotry, that those voters care more about sending a message to the political establishment than they do about the rights and welfare of human beings. And of course, people on the coasts could stand to meet more rural and ex-urban people to understand why they're anxious about a changing world and less economic opportunity if that's what's happening. But rural and ex-urban people need to see more of America. People do not understand the depths of how little rural America travels and sees other people and cultures. I'm from the Midwest, and I love the Midwest, but it's not representative of modern America. We cannot fetishize it as real America. It's part of America, a great, big, beautiful, messy republic, but just a part. What we are seeing is a reaction to a rapidly changing world, a world that is becoming more connected, a world that is more diverse, a world where education and skills are necessary for good jobs. Change has not been kind to the Midwest and rural America, and rather than embrace it, rural and white working class Americans are twisting and turning, fighting it at every step of the way. We will never return to the days where a white man could barely graduate high school and walk onto a factory floor at 18 and get a well-paying job for life. That hasn't set in for much of the Midwest. This doesn't mean that coastal Americans can't empathize more with their fellow Americans and try to find solutions to these problems, nor does it mean that there aren't many struggling working class people in coastal states. And it certainly doesn't mean coastal Americans haven't contributed to this divisiveness. Let me tell you about the Ohio I knew. It's the birthplace of the Wright brothers and our first astronauts, John Glenn and Neil Armstrong. Okay, they might have been the first astronauts, but okay. That's where generals who won the Civil War came from, and politicians that led Reconstruction after our darkest hour. It's a place where no matter how improbably the Browns lose year after year, people keep showing up, always holding out hope for the next year. It's a place of deep pride. It's not flyover country. It's a place worth visiting. We are all real Americans, and it's time we start empathizing with one another more. Then the note that P.S. this started as a tweet storm on Twitter. I got a message from a high school classmate who now lives in Arizona. He had this to say: I can't believe what you tweeted was true. I never thought of that before. When you are in the white bubble, you just don't know it. A very interesting tweet storm and a very interesting contribution to the discourse. Okay, catching up on things and summing up, another comment from Parlio. After Brexit, there was a European proposal to give young people a free month's rail ticket throughout the continent. That is an interesting thought. I hadn't had this in mind when I came up with this, but, just by way of a suggestion since we're heading into the weekend, I always felt like we didn't travel enough at all, but certainly with our kids. But traveling with kids is a difficult thing to do. And, the initial thought, if you say, I want to travel with the kids and expose them to things, is travel the world, take them abroad. But, one, that's expensive and difficult. And two, it's not entirely certain at what age do they become able to absorb that. I think, done correctly, I think at a much younger age they could. But I don't know that I have the expertise to do anything more than hit the tourist spots. But also it's an enormously expensive undertaking. And with the rest of your complicated life to live, and basketball practices and taekwondo practices and after school this and that, homework and projects, going abroad frequently doesn't make a great deal of sense. It's just not possible. And so I thought, what we could do is take long weekends on just travel to other cities around the country. Not even necessarily ones, who knows where we can raise the money to actually, fly around the country, although that makes it easier to spend more time on the ground there. But just driving distance, doing the East and Midwest, places we can drive to, places that you wouldn't necessarily say, let's take a vacation to. Cleveland or Charlotte, North Carolina, or what have you. You might be brought there for business, but you wouldn't say, come on, kids. Charlotte. You might say Philadelphia. Let's go see the Liberty Bell. All that we have yet to do all of those things, but just go to different places. See the states. Yes, the tourist traps. Yes, the great national monuments, but also let's just play Pokemon Go in Cleveland this weekend. Play Pokemon Go in, Savannah, Georgia, what have you. Take your choice. Any place that we can reach. I mean, if we could reach more places quickly by car, or had more money to fly elsewhere, or take the train for that matter, or had longer breaks, we'd hit the Midwest more often. Just to show them what it's like. Even if it's the same damn thing. Even if we eat in the same damn restaurants. Just to be elsewhere. I mean, I didn't have this in mind. It's a thought. I like the idea of the URL pass. Of course, that's something that they're familiar with, and it's easy enough for URL to go ahead and do. That's an interesting backdoor into a solution. I think a great one, which is probably why you shared it. Thanks, Parleo. All right, closing minutes of the show here, and we'll have to get around to telling you what's going to come up next on the after show. Quick hint, Justice, I haven't seen it yet. Send me your summary so I can share it with everybody, and you can find out about all the things that I didn't get to cram into our 2 hours. I definitely would like you all to read about the Megyn Kelly book, because there was more than just the revelation that Roger Ailes sexually propositioned her. The big news of the day from the book, it seems, is that it turns out that there's allegations, and I don't know, I guess it came from outside the book, because now I have an article from The Hill that says Megyn Kelly is denying this story, but you remember the big complaint that Donna Brazile, we didn't discuss it on the show, supposedly leaked questions in advance to Hillary Clinton about the questions that they were going to be facing in the debates. And I can't recall whether that was supposed to be primary debates or general election debates. But at any rate, it became a big, not the big, to do, but a couple of days of kerfuffle over this, including, by the way, Fox News and Megyn Kelly herself questioning Donna Brazile about this thing and saying, hey, you know, this stuff is outrageous, and can you imagine if it had been a Republican? And then reports now coming out that it turns out that Donald Trump himself telephoned the executives at Fox News to gripe about various things and to say that he had basically, that somebody had leaked to him that the leadoff question in one of the debates was going to be a very pointed one directed at him. And so somebody had leaked somewhere along the line, and so it was alleged that perhaps Fox executives were themselves leaking those questions. Megyn Kelly says no, according to The Hill, but another one of the interesting outcomes of the release of her book. And there is much more, and I'll share some of those with you. And we will, I don't know, we got a weekend to get through. I don't know if it's going to be any more difficult to get through without having our show to lean on. But we'll be back on Monday, and let me tell you what will take you into the balance of Friday here on Netroots Radio. Trump said his infrastructure plan wouldn't cost the government anything, but the same can't be said for the American people. We'll get a good look at what he is actually proposing in the way of some policy anyway, next on the after show. Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley explains how the Republicans are stealing the Supreme Court, and several human rights groups and think tanks say voter suppression laws likely tipped the scales for a Trump victory. You're off the hook, Facebook. For the last half, it's the Friday News Dump and Recycling Center, news that's been repurposed with a purpose, and a preview of what America can expect. Trump's decade of broken promises, business failings, and overbearing political bluster has angered Scotland so much he has been stripped of all honorary degrees and titles. Oh no. And a federal judge in Oregon rules a group of children can sue the government over climate negligence. That's a hell of a story. All of that coming up on the after show with Wink and Justice.
From
next.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thanks so much for listening. Maybe this will be one of the avenues on which we organize for La Resistance. Coming up, we'll have to see what we can do with the show. I thank you for being there and making me feel like it's important to get back on the radio and talk my way through some of this. I appreciate what you have done for me. I'll see you next